Hello everyone, my name is Shubhajit and you are watching Web Dev Shubhajit. So today we will be discussing about the Promise API and the functionalities provided by it. So this is kind of an advanced video only, but I will explain you in a very basic way so that all of you can understand. Okay, so before coming to the functionalities provided by promises, we should understand that what promises are in JavaScript. Let me first show you some examples of promises, then I can explain you better. So we have this a promise, right? So promises in JavaScript can be created with the help of this new keyword, new promise, and inside this, it takes a callback function which has two parameters, resolve and reject. Okay, and inside this, the promise will either be resolved or rejected. So here what I have done inside the promise is that I have a set timeout and will be uh, and which will be called after 1 second. There's 1000 milliseconds, it should be called after 1 second. So after 1 second, what will happen? This resolve with a value of p1 will happen for this p1 promise. So if I tell you in short what will happen in p1, after 1 second, this promise will be resolved. Now same case, if I go along with this P2 promise, if you have understood this P1 promise correctly, then you should be able to tell that this will be resolved with a value P2 after 2 seconds. Same way this will be resolved with a value P3 after 3 seconds. And this is generally, I have like initialized a P4 value with a string P4. Okay. Okay. Now, uh, why promises are used in JavaScript? So promises are used in JavaScript when we want to remove uh, the main thread, not remove the main thread, when we want to bypass some functionality from the main thread which can be done on the background, and whenever it gets the data, it will go to the main thread and gets executed. Okay. Let me explain you more. So let's say we need to read from some file. We need to read some data from a file. Now we are on the main thread. Now this reading from a file, this operation comes in. We should actually not wait for this operation to complete before going to the next steps, because it might happen that the next steps which are there, they might not be actually related to anything reading that data from the file. So in that case, we can actually use a promise. So what will happen is this will remove the execution from the main thread. The main thread will execute all the things after this promise, and in this promise what will happen, it will go read from the files, get the data whatever there is present in the file, and then it will call to the main thread that okay, now my reading has been completed, please let me execute my further function inside the promise. So in that case it is helpful. Now let's say if I take this example only which I have written here. So what is happening here? I have a promise p1 which will go out of the execution of the main thread, and what will happen, it will actually wait for 1 second, but it will not block other functionalities after this. If there is some console log, let's say after p1, this console log will be printed. After p1 will be printed first, and then only this after 1 second the set timeout will be resolving this with this promise with a value of p1. Okay, same goes for other promises also. I hope you have understood that with the help of promises we actually prevent the main thread from blocking, and it actually lets the other functions, or let the other like operations to happen, keeping it side and executing in the background. Okay, that is fine. Now, if you see, these promises will be resolved one after the other. Okay, P1, P2, P3, P4. P4 is actually not a promise, but I will explain you later that it can be created into a promise. Okay, with the help of promise.resolve or promise.reject directly. So that is a different thing. But for now, our main purpose is to understand some of the functionalities which are provided by the Promise API, which is Promise.all, Promise.all.settled, Promise.race, Promise.any, Promise.resolve, and Promise.reject. So let us first look into Promise.all. Okay, so yeah, Promise.all. And the Promise.all, what it takes, it actually takes an array of promises to be executed parallelly. So what will happen, I can actually pass these promises P1, P2, P3 and P4. So if I write it in this way, P4 will also be taken as a promise only here. So internally what it will do, it will just do const p4 is equals to promise.resolve with a string value p4. It will be taking it as that. So if it is even not a promise, just a direct value, it will be resolving it right away. So that is the thing. So you should take p4 as the simplest promise which will be resolved right away. Okay, so for this p4 promise we can also do this promise dot resolve p4. Yeah, this is the same thing. Okay, so promise.all and an array. So this promise.all actually returns a promise. Okay, and in promise we have a method called then. So this promise.all, whenever this whole thing is resolved, it will call the then method with the result, and we can actually print the result and see that what comes from it, what comes after resolving this promise. So if you look back at it, this p4 promise is resolved right away, this p3 promise is resolved after 3 seconds, p2 resolved after 2 seconds, p1 resolved after 1 second. Okay, so if I run these all promises in parallel, how much time it should be taking? It should be taking the time of the longest of all the promises, that is this 3000 milliseconds, that is 3 seconds. So if we execute all of them parallelly, the total time taken till all of the promises are resolved, but all the promises are settled, for let's say either resolved or rejected, all the promises settled, it will happen in 3 seconds. Let me tell you what promise.all does. So promise.all, inside that whatever promises we have passed, it will actually uh, give us the output as all the resolved promises, given that all the promises are resolved. And if any one of these promises, either from p1 to p4, p1, p2, p3, p3 and p4, if any one of them rejects, then it will throw an error. Then inside the result, we will get an error actually. Okay, so let me run this application now. Node and promise implementation and promise.js. So currently I am in YouTube Explain, this main folder. I have to go inside promise implementation and then promise. Okay, so that's why this command. Node is used to actually run JavaScript files, so I'm using that. You can also go here. So I have installed some VS Code extension, and due to which I am able to get this run button here. From that also I can run the code. Let me do it from here. I will also show it from the above one later. After 3 seconds, okay. What just happened? I haven't saved the things. I'm really sorry for that. After 3 seconds, we should get an output of P1, P2, P3, P4. So you see that all of them are resolved, and that's why they are having an array with all the resolved values. Now, if any one of them rejects, so let's say this got rejected, so I can reject them with the help of reject this parameter, and I can resolve them with the help of res parameter. Yeah, let me run this again, and you can see, yeah, so error unhandled, rejection, the promise rejected with the reason P2. So you can see that we just actually had a reject in the P2 promise, and it got rejected due to that, and no output came. So this is where the Promise.all functionality comes in. I hope you have understood this functionality. I hope you can understand that what then does. What it does is, whenever this Promise.all, this is resolved, or it returns some value, resolved or rejected, whatever, it returns some value, then it will run this then function. Whatever value it is returned, it will actually give that value to result, and after that we can actually further manipulate or further do some computation based on that result. So if I take an example, that if we are in place of this Promise.all, we are actually reading a file. After that file is read, we can have a dot then on that, and in the result we will actually get the contents of the file, whatever is present inside that file, and then further we can actually use those contents in some further operation. So that is how it works. Okay, and it will not block the further computation. So if I will show you, yeah, I should show you that if I have a console.log program ends, which is actually after this Promise.all, you should be able to see that program ends will be called first, and after that this promise will be resolved or rejected, whatever. So I should actually have it as resolved only for now to show you. Yeah, and then we can actually run that. See, program ends comes at the first, and then the promises are resolved. I hope you got it now. Let's now go to the next functionality, which is Promise.all settled. Yeah, let me comment this also. Unnecessarily, it will be showing console logs. Promise.all settled. And again, the parameters should be the same. And then we have dot then result, the same thing. We will console log it out. We will console log the result. Okay. Okay. So what just happened? We have a Promise.all settled dot then result console.log result, same as here. How does all settled differ? So all settled means either resolved or rejected. Error will not be thrown. Whatever resolved, that will be coming as fulfilled, and whatever rejected, that will be coming as I have to see what it will be coming as, but error will not be thrown, and they will be shown in an array with their status as fulfilled or rejected, whatever it is. Okay, let me save this one, and let me run that application again. Okay, now can you see that we have an array, and in each of them we have this status fulfilled and the value. So as we have none of the promises which are rejected, that's why all the promises are with fulfilled state. Now let's say I want to reject this third one. Okay, promise P3, and let me run this again. Then you should not be able to see all fulfilled. There will be one which is not fulfilled. So can you see the P3 is rejected, it's not fulfilled. So here error is not thrown, but all of them, like whatever rejected or resolved, that is, whenever all of them settles, output will be returned of all the promises. Okay, I hope you have understood all settled also. Very much similar to all, but here error will not be thrown if some promise is rejected. It will just return that when all the promises are resolved or rejected, whatever it is. Now we have promise.race. Okay, now we have promise.race. What does promise.race does? So in promise.race, we actually have the same format of parameters p1, p2, p3, p4 as the parameters, and then result whatever it is coming, I will console log it. But what race will do, race will actually give us the value of first settled promise. First settled promise means either resolved promise or a rejected promise. It will give us the first value. If the first promise which completed either resolved or rejected, that promise will be printed or that promise will be returned. So you should understand this promise.all settled and promise.all are returning an array of promises based on the array which is passed to them. But here it will only return the promise.trace, as the name suggests, trace. It will race among all the promises and will return the first settled promise. It doesn't matter that settled promise is either resolved or rejected, but the first promise which is completed, it will return that. Okay, so if you see among P1, P2, P3 and P4, which is the first resolved promise, P3 will be first settled promise, sorry, not resolved or rejected, both it can be. So P3 after 3 seconds, P2 after 2 seconds, P1 after 1 second. But P4 gets completed right away. You should understand that. So in that case, P4 should be the one which should be outputted in the result. Okay, let's see by running it. Can you see P4 comes in? Okay, I want to make things a bit like give a race to it. For giving a race to it, Control C. Okay, so we have P4 and we are also setting the timeout here. Let me give it as 700 milliseconds, which is the least among all. So in this also, you will see that it will be coming after a bit delay, but it will be still the first. So here P4 came right away because it resolved right away, but here it will resolve after 700 milliseconds, which is still the fastest. Can you see after some time? Okay, rejected. I'm really sorry. It should be resolved. Okay, so this actually tells us if it is rejected also, if it is rejected also, then that rejected one will be shown. So P4 at first it got rejected, so it will be shown. But let me resolve it and show you that, and the same goes for resolve also. After some time, the P4 is shown. That sometime is 700 milliseconds. Okay, I hope you have understood the race condition also. Not race condition, that is a different thing, that is a threading concept. But I hope you have understood the promise.race functionality of the Promise API. Now, very similar to race, we have Promise.any. Okay, let me explain you that. So Promise.race is done. Now Promise.any. So what is the difference between Promise.race and Promise.any? So Promise.race will give us the first settled promise, that is either resolved or rejected. It will give us. But Promise.any will give us the first resolved promise. Will give us the first resolved promise among P1, P2, P3, P4. So if I make the P4 as rejected, which is the least time happening, but do you think that any will give P4? No, because it might be the fastest promise to get completed, but it is rejected, right? It is not the fastest resolving promise. The fastest resolving promise is P1 after 1 second. So if we run the file, we will be able to see that we are with P1. Why? Because it's the fastest resolving promise. If I reject P1 also, then what should be the output? The output should be P2, because after that P2 is there with 2 seconds, so P2 is shown. If I reject this also, then P3 will be shown. Okay, some of you might be thinking, okay, if we reject all of them, then what will happen? Okay, if we reject all of them, let's see what will happen. After 3 seconds of parallel execution, can you see? It gives us an error. What the error says? All promises are rejected. I cannot actually give at least one resolve promise because all of them are rejected, and it will show the reason for that and also all the errors. So that is the behavior. Now I will quickly tell you about this promise.resolve and promise.reject. So initially, as I have promise.resolve P4. So this is something which gets resolved right away. If you want to resolve that something right away, then we can do this. And if you want to reject something right away, we can do this. Okay, I hope you have understood this video. I know this is quite long, but just go through it. It's really good to understand all of these uh, promises happening in parallel execution, because interviewers might be asking you about that. And in upcoming videos, I will also implement these Promise.all settled on our own in JavaScript with our own functionality. Okay, so I will be implementing them from scratch. So stay tuned for upcoming videos like this. And if you have any doubts, please put them in the comment section. If you like this video, put a thumbs up. If you don't like it, still put a thumbs up because it motivates me. Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Bye.